Hey, what's going on, everybody? How you guys doing? Welcome back to Podio Commentary. My name is Matt Jarbo, and today I give my Scouts honor. I'm doing the Scouts honor right now. I'm holding up the three fingers. I promise to be as positive as I can while talking about this movie. If you've been following the podcast for the last couple of days, you know that I've been talking about the Sleepaway Camp series. Yeah, it's a series that I found myself entirely vested into. And so after watching 1, 2, and 3, I knew that Return to Sleepaway Camp existed. I sought out to find Return to Sleepaway Camp. It is currently unavailable anywhere you want to find it on the internet, unless you look into some more dubious places, which I'll admit that I totally did. Now, that's probably for the best. This movie is not great, and I don't quite know what exactly they were going for with this, but I'm gonna do my damnedest to talk about it in the positive sense. Okay, so this movie was the only film that Robert Hiltzik did as a follow-up to Sleepaway Camp. Okay, so this was the only one that he did that was a follow-up to that. Otherwise, everything else was done with other people. And of course, he just took the money because they had to license it from him and everything else because he owns the rights to it. It's his idea. I mean, it's literally based around the summer camp he went to as a child. In fact, that's where they shot the movie, the initial film, because that's what he wrote. He wrote what he knew, and he did it while he was in film school. I just read a new interview with him, learning things that I didn't know before, which give me a lot more respect and appreciation and even adoration or admiration for this guy, simply because he saw something he wanted to do and then he went out to go do it. However, since then, he's only made these two films. Like, that's it. Otherwise, he is now a partner at a New York law firm. So, Robert, if you're listening to this, I am sorry I had to sail the high seas to find your movie. Don't sue me, because I'm talking about it. I'm gonna try to be as nice as I can. Okay. So this movie ignores. This movie is the Superman Returns of the Sleepaway Camp franchise. Okay. This movie completely ignores Sleepaway Camp 2, Sleepaway Camp 3, and then there's even a Sleepaway Camp 4 that came out in 2012, which is, from what I've been reading about it, largely like a highlight reel from 2 and 3. It's maybe even number 1. I don't quite know. I don't know if I want to watch that, to be honest with you. I probably won't. I think I've kind of run my fill with this franchise. But this movie, I don't think, has much to say. Right? The first movie, I think, has something to say. The second and third film, I think, had something to say. This movie just comes across like we need to do another movie. There's money to do another movie. Let's go do the other movie. Let's get back some of the original cast, because that was a big thing, especially now in these horror movie reboots, right? But this movie came out in 2008, but they shot it in 2003. And then it ended up being stuck in, editing hell, production hell, to get done. And largely that had to do with the fact that there was some CG in the movie that Robert Hiltzik was just not happy with. He just didn't like it. And then once you see the movie, you kind of see why, I guess, But this is one that it speaks to, like, the highs and the lows of the horror franchise, of horror genre in general, where you'll get like a good first movie, and then you'll get these terrible follow-up sequels that aren't trying to do anything other than capitalize on the name. Normally, those aren't made by the people who made the original. In the case of the first two, the second and third Sleepaway Camps, they played off of the original while being their own kind of wholly unique thing. This one is a direct sequel to the original, and it is very much, it pales in comparison. Like it just, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand why he wrote it good. That's fine. But why he chose to direct it. Okay. Now, all I can really find about this in regards to its production history is that it was filmed in 2003 and it was scheduled to be released theatrically somewhere between 2004 and 2006. But because of the unsatisfactory CGI effects that Robert Hiltzik was not happy with, the movie, again, went back in and kept getting fixed and tweaked and fixed and tweaked. There was a small FX group that was eventually hired to reshoot the work that was unapproved by him, including the skinned body of Michael and the death of camper TC in any of the unfinished pickup shots. So they shot the movie. They realized they didn't have everything they need. And then a small team went in and basically like finished everything. Okay, makes sense. By the way, TC is kind of funny because, it's that's Tom Cruise. That's meant to be Tom Cruise. That was in the second Sleepaway Camp movie where you had a character TC. You had all the characters were named after Brat Pack kids. TC was a character that came over, and then you had Petey, played by Kate Simsis, who I think they were trying to, call her Petey and not Peter, and it's a whole thing. And I'm getting ahead of myself here. This movie is complicated. It's very complicated. Now, the movie itself finally did see a release, but not until November of 2008. It took 5 years. And it was actually Magnolia Pictures that came on in, scooped up the rights, and then did the distribution. Now, the movie did not do well when it finally came out in November of 2008 or internationally in 2009. Horror movies definitely like have their fan bases. This movie was probably pretty lauded by a lot of fans. There was probably a lot of hype, probably a lot of excitement, especially if you grew up watching the Sleepaway Camp movies and you found them in the 90s or maybe in the early 2000s, and you just kind of found that cult horror fan group that talks about it quite often, And this is one of those ones where I think they were really banking on that. But it just didn't land the plane in the way that it needed to. Was it David Hartley of Bloody Disgusting gave it a 2 out of 5 and says that it's an unfunny film. It's unimaginative. It's draggy with an ending that manages to disappoint with its banality. Dread Central's Steve Barton, who went on to become a producer of the Terrifier films, gave it a 1.5 out of 5, saying, "Gone is the black humor of the first film. Gone is the insane twist. Gone are the inventive kills. And gone are nearly all of the charm that has kept this franchise alive." I'm going to disagree with him about the inventive kills. There were some inventive kills in the movie. There were. I think but he's right about everything else. Again, I talked about this before, about the black humor, the dark humor. There really wasn't any black or dark humor. I think people keep throwing that at the original movie. The original movie is very straightforward. It's not really played up for laughs. It's not really played up for anything other than horror. The second and the third movie absolutely play up for comedy. Pamela Springsteen absolutely, plays this like juxtaposition of a serial killer than what you would know, from a slasher in these movies, where she's bright, cheery. Her moral ethic is, hey, if you're not a dick, you're probably going to live. And that's really about it. And she'll kill you with a smile on her face while making a quip. Like, that's the dark humor. That's the black humor. The original didn't have any of that. You had pedophiles in the original. The chef was a pedophile, tried to molest Angela in the movie. You had the counselor, Meg, who was going to go sleep with like this 60, 70-year-old actor, the guy who ran the camp, who, by the way, died like a year after the movie came out, and he took an arrow to the neck and she got stabbed in the back while in the shower. So like it's kind of like the idea here of like the morality of the character kills in the original movie came from the idea that these people were bad people. Okay. Not that they were like breaking the spirit of camping, which is in the sequels, but that they were bad people. And that does transfer over here. But now we're given like a new avatar to follow around. And he's really not a good avatar. Really not a good main character. And all things considered, the movie tries to throw you for a loop, and it just, I don't know, man. Like, I can see why this has been relegated to the trash heap. And I don't want to be too mean about it, because it's like, I was watching it all the way through, but the vibe wasn't there. Like, they shot this digital, I feel. It didn't have the same feeling, the same aesthetic. They didn't have the cinematographer. Everything was overlit. Everything was bright. You could tell it was lower budget, even though, by the way, just as an aside, this movie, according to Wikipedia, had a budget over 4 times the amount of the original. It had a budget of $4 million. $4 million. Now, granted, if you look at filmmaking in 1982 versus 2003, yeah, it's going to go up quite a bit. So you can see, like, the adjusted for inflation sort of thing. But still, like, visual effects, practical effects had come a long way. There were some interesting things here, but like, also there was a lot of deaths that happened off screen. Like, for example, let's just get into the movie here because I just got to talk about this. It opens up with a bunch of boys in a camping in a cabin, and they're lighting their farts on fire. And you can easily see that it's definitely something that is not an actual fart being lit on fire because it's got the blast radius of like a flamethrower. But then you got this kid Alan. And at first you think he's the bully, big fat kid, kind of like a Angus Bethune type character, but with nowhere near the charm or anything else of Angus. And he's just like upset at like being made fun of, and then he threatens them and he lights his own farts and it just isn't as good. It's kind of like a little tiny fart, so then he's feeling a certain way and he gets into, an argument with the camp counselor and all of these things. And like everyone hates Alan. Everyone hates him. And he keeps telling everyone to smell his ass or their ass stinks. Like he's got a catchphrase. And that's used up later on too, by the way. But it's like, okay. So this kid, like, he comes across as like he's autistic. Or, he's retarded. Like you don't quite know. He's in that weird, socially awkward place, but he doesn't do himself any favors. He's not a likable character. He's not even someone to empathize with. Like, yeah, everyone treats him like shit, and that sucks. But he also, like, kind of brings it on himself in a number of ways. And so it's always kind of weird. And he ends up, like, not wanting to eat the chicken. So he goes into the kitchen of the mess hall, where we find out that Isaac Hayes is playing the lead chef. Isaac Hayes is playing chef in the movie. That's his character name. And he's got a white apron and a red shirt. And this is after Isaac Hayes had left South Park, I believe. Or maybe it was around that time. But it was definitely an interesting callback to South Park. That part's kind of interesting. Additionally, Vincent Pastore, Big Pussy from The Sopranos, is in this movie. And they even call him a big pussy in the movie. Like, it's meta. Like, it's meant to be meta, but in like the worst possible way. By trying to reference other franchises. At least in Sleepaway Camp 2 and Sleepaway Camp 3, they referenced other horror franchises. But they didn't do that here. And then, so then you've got Mickey, the cook, who is totally, he's a comedian. He's, what's his name? Lenny Veneto is the guy, and you recognize him when you see him or whatever. And he starts like throwing eggs at Alan and he's tormenting Alan. And all this stuff. Everyone just torments Alan. And then all of a sudden, Mickey's out there making French fries, and here comes somebody and lifts his legs up, just like with the cook from the first movie. Except here it's not boiling water, it's fry grease, cooking grease, and then ends up dunking the head in and ends up killing him. Unlike the other one where they just burned him in where he left, but it was like, okay, that's a good kill. And then Alan goes to a social and he ends up meeting up with like these other kids. By a guy his name is Weed. They call him Weed, and they're always high. And he was like the son from Picket freaking Fences on ABC back in the 90s. That one with Tom Skerritt. And like he's there, he's got a mohawk, and then they roll dried manure into a joint and they get Alan to smoke it. And then he starts hacking it up and he falls on one of the guy's crotch. So then all like the kids are like, "Hey, Blowjob, your name's Blowjob now." Like, what? And then you got like Petey, and she's like the other counselor, and she's really nice and she's understanding and stuff like that. And so, you don't know, like, does she have a thing for him? Does he have a thing for her? No, he's got a thing for a girl named Laura. And he's trying to like, talk to Laura and like, whatever. And everyone's making fun of him about that. And then all this stuff nonstop happens, right? But then you get to like, look, there's the kills. you got the whole situation with Weed, and Weed ends up getting tied to a chair and force-fed gasoline. And then, basically, like, the killer puts a sticker over Weed's mouth that says, like, say no to drugs, basically. Puts a joint in the sticker, lights it, and then he catches on fire and the whole body ignites because he's got gasoline in him. That was cool. I'm not going to lie. That was actually a pretty cool kill. I like that one quite a bit. But then, it goes to another week later and all the kids seem to be fine. One of their guys died, right? Even the owner is like, oh my God, we're going to lose half the kids because of this. But like, no one seemed to leave. No one seemed to care. And that was a problem that I saw with the first movie as well. When counselors or when campers started dying and they started finding their bodies, I understand the motivation of the owner to like keep it quiet. I understand that. But even he starts kind of losing his grip on reality as the movie goes along because like everything he built is slipping through his fingers and he's starting to like put that on somebody else. And that kind of happened here, but it happened here because they brought back Paul DeAngelo as a Ronnie, who was was one of the guys from the first movie. He was one of the counselors who now co-owns this particular camp with Frank, played by, Big Pussy. And so there's this you have character stuff that's split. And, Vincent Pastore, like, doesn't care. He's got this bird that he loves. And that's all he really cares about. And ultimately, like, he gets killed after being knocked out with a hammer. And then, like, they put the killer puts the bird cage back on his head, but then fills it with rats. And the rats then kill him, eat his eye, and then go into his stomach and, start eating out his stomach and everything else. It's kind of dumb. And then you got like Randy and Linda, the camp counselors that are kind of just dicks. They go to the pump house to have sex. Linda goes back to the car to go get some beer. Killer goes up, wraps the some rope around Randy, ties him to the tree, pulls down his pants, and then like wraps a fishing line around his ding-a-ling, his dong, and then has like the world's longest fishing line tied to the back of the Jeep. And then Linda gets scared and she starts driving off. And therefore that ends up like, you get to this back and forth scene where like the Jeep gets stuck in mud and it's right at the end of the line. So it's like kind of tugging on the wang, not tugging on the wang. Randy's like, oh my God, is my junk going to be okay? Sort of thing. And then like she ends up putting it in 4-wheel drive and she drives off and it just rips his dick off. But he's still alive. And then as she's driving into the night, there's a barbed wire, basically garrote trap sort of thing, right? Strewn across the road, wraps around her head. She crashes the truck. She doesn't die. It's just like these kills like stop making any sense. They're not bad. Like, I think they're inventive in their own right. But like the one that got me was the girl Bear or Belle. And she's picking on, or Bella, she's picking on Alan the whole movie, and eventually like she goes back to the room. And she goes and lays down in bed and starts snacking on something. And then the killer is like rested above in the rafters. And now Alan's a big dude. He's a big husky guy. There's no way Alan would be the person that would be able to sit up there and do that. But then the blanket gets pulled back and there's all these like spikes and screwdrivers and knives that are like on this board that's right above Bella. And she didn't see it. And then the killer just jumps on and lands on it and end up killing her that way. I thought that was kind of cool. Now, the other thing going on in this movie at the same time is they start trying to tie it back to Angela, right? Where's Angela? Where's Angela? Where's Angela? Well, there's a sheriff. And the sheriff has got like throat cancer. So he speaks through like the little tracheotomy thing, right? Right? The like Ned from South Park. And then that sheriff then goes and finds Ricky from the original movie, Jonathan Tiersten, to ask about where Angela is. And he's like, Angela is in an insane asylum. I know, I go visit Angela like every couple weeks. Okay. Right. And then like, okay, cool. They brought him back. And then the cop is like, well, I might have to call you later for something or another. Then eventually he shows up at the thing. So he goes back to the camp because somebody called him to come back to the camp. I mean, you can kind of see where this is going when they go back and they start bringing in people from the original movie. Like they're trying to tie it all together. So who's Angela? Because now we're starting to figure out Angela's back. But who is Angela? Well, this is where, the one counselor who kind of co-owns it, the guy from the first movie, right, Ronnie, he starts thinking that this girl, Petey, is Angela. Never mind the fact that Petey is like in her early 20s and not a person who would have been, in her 40s or late 30s, which is what Angela would have been around that time. So he's losing his mind and everyone starts losing their mind. But like what I think are the inventive kills are the attempt to, the kill of TC was kind of cool, where there's a broom handle that gets carved into a spike and the little hole gets drilled into the bottom of the cabin and TC's on like house arrest basically. And the spike comes up and almost gets him and he keeps looking through the hole, right? Like, what's going to happen. And then here comes another guy and the other guy's like looking through the hole and you're like, oh, someone's going to get stabbed in the eye. And then TC gets stabbed in the eye and it goes in his head and he's running around and he runs into the wall and the spike goes through the back of his head. That was kind of a cool kill. But then you get to like the finale of the movie and you've got like Laura who is just like, upset. Oh, sorry. No, it's not Laura. It's Karen. I got her name wrong. The actress's name, I believe it's Laura was from another movie. This is what happens when you watch them all back and back, right? Anyway, you're probably gonna go, who the fuck is Laura? It's Karen. I'm sorry. Anyway, Karen ends up getting knocked out and then wakes up in the gym with a rope tied around her neck and the other end of the rope wrapped around or tied up to the lifting of the net. So then the killer just kind of turns it on and it becomes almost just like Saw style trap, if you will, of trying to like, hang her, right? Because she was involved in the torment of Alan. She starts screaming that she's sorry. She's like legitimately sorry. She didn't even really want to do it, but she kind of did it because of peer pressure. And then in comes, the brother of Alan, Michael, and he tries to get her down. And then in comes the sheriff and the sheriff helps. And then the sheriff hugs Karen and like Karen's sobbing. And then that's kind of like where the movie, goes from there. Cause then Michael's going to go kill Alan. And you're like, okay, at this point you're kind of going like, something's going on here. Well, then they run to where like Alan hangs out with his frog friends and Michael shows up. And again, it's his stepbrother and he's pissed off at him and he grabs a croquet mallet and he starts beating Alan down, getting ready to kill him. And then as he's getting ready to, go for the final hit, a hand grabs the mallet and that kind of cuts to black. And then we cut back over to, Ronnie and Ricky and another counselor. And they're running down there and they find Alan knocked out and then like, what's going on? And then you start hearing the sheriff talking through the little voice thing about like how, it's always them. It's always these kids. They never learn. They're always mean. And then as like the camera tracks, you start watching the feet and then like the wig comes off, the nose comes off. And then it just cuts to the shot of freaking Angela, of Felissa Rose doing the face and like, laughing like crazy. And then she just kind of stops and stares into the camera. And we cut over I got it backwards. First, Michael has been skinned alive because she says he likes to skin frogs. So now he knows what it's like. And so she skinned him alive. And that's like the final gore scene of it. And then we cut back to her face and then it ends. And you're like, okay, what the hell? But then we get this post-credit scene that sets like it takes place a couple weeks before the events of the movie, where Angela has a broken down car and a cop comes over and he's helping her out and he gets underneath the car and she ends up knocking the car down and the tire, the wheel well crushes his face. She then takes his clothes and assumes his identity. And that ends up being like how she got the cop uniform, but not how she got out of the psych ward. It was, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like I said, this movie, it came out, it was a tough watch. It was a rough watch. It really was. Cause you're like, once you know the twist from the first movie, you're kind of expecting something similar. And this is almost like a remake of the original film, but just without any of the horror, any of the biting elements. It was toothless in so many ways. And it's just frustrating when it's like you have this idea, you could really play off of it, you could really be inventive with it, but then you don't. And it just goes to show you that, like, it's not to say that, like, Robert did anything really bad. It's his baby, his idea. He can do with it what he wants. But having another writer take a pass at this would have been the best idea because, he wrote the original movie as well, and they shot that script. He didn't have time to, like, write more, shoot more, and then whittle it down. Like, it was kind of surgical precision. And you can tell he attempted to do that here. But I think that $4 million budget, and a lot of it ended up going to paying, like, Vincent Pastore and Isaac Hayes, and maybe renting the camp during the off season. You know what I'm saying? I really feel like that's a lot of what happened. The movie came, the movie went. And in that same interview I was reading earlier with Robert, he was talking about how, and this was in 2014, so way after the release of this movie on DVD, as well as way after the filming of the movie, 11 years later. And he was talking about how there might be a reboot and how he's already written the reboot. He modernized the reboot. And he's just waiting for someone to come knocking to basically give him the money to go and make the reboot because he wants to make it himself. And I would say at this point, no, maybe not the best idea. Maybe not the best idea right now in this environment to tackle this kind of story that particular way. Just saying. Just saying. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to make it political, but I mean, like, it's going to be controversial. It's going to be a whole big thing. It really is an issue. Maybe don't do that. But if somebody had an interesting take on it that they wanted to push and not just modernize the story with the same kind of ending, that could be something worth looking into. As I've talked about before, there is the queer side of things, and then you have the conservative morality side of things. Horror rests largely in a Venn diagram of both, square in the center. This could be something worth really exploring, and you can make it work. But at the same time, who goes to summer camps anymore? That's the other side of that as well. No one really does summer camps that are like go away for the summer as much anymore. That trope is largely dead. So what would you do with it? Sleepaway cruise? It's a cruise. Everyone's on for the week. Is it like a camp cruise? I don't know. Like a wellness retreat in Alaska, a wellness retreat in Arizona. Like with those sweat huts or whatever, sweat lodges. I don't know. I'm not the person to tell that story, but maybe someday somebody will be. That being said, what are your thoughts on Return to Sleepaway Camp? Let me know. If you're listening to this on iTunes or Spotify, please leave a review. Please subscribe to the podcast. If you're listening to this on YouTube, thank you guys very much. Leave a like, leave a comment. Check me out on Substack, podiocommentary.substack.com. I write articles about the state of the industry, what's going on, give my takes on those, as well as youtube.com/Podio Commentary. I will see you guys later. Have yourself a great day. Thank you again for watching and listening. And go watch a movie and let me know what you think of it. Any movie.